On April 15th, 1452, in the small Tuscan town of Vinci, a child was born who would forever change humanity's understanding of art, science, and the very nature of genius itself. But this birth was shrouded in scandal that would shape every aspect of Leonardo's extraordinary life. The infant who emerged that spring morning was illegitimate, the product of a forbidden union between Ser Piero da Vinci, a respected notary, and Caterina, a peasant woman whose social status made their relationship impossible in the rigid hierarchy of Renaissance Italy. This illegitimate status wasn't merely a social inconvenience, it was a defining force that would drive Leonardo to prove himself in ways no legitimate son would ever need to consider. Unlike his legitimate half-brothers who would inherit their father's profession and social standing, Leonardo faced a world where traditional paths were closed to him. He couldn't become a notary like his father, couldn't attend university, and couldn't easily join the established guilds that controlled most professions. Yet this apparent disadvantage became the crucible that forged one of history's most revolutionary minds. Free from the constraints of conventional education, Leonardo's curiosity developed without the limitations that formal schooling often imposed. While other children memorized Latin texts and religious doctrine, Leonardo roamed the countryside around Vinci, observing the flight patterns of birds, studying the flow of water through streams, and sketching everything his eyes encountered. Historians still debate whether Leonardo's grandfather, Antonio, recognized the boy's exceptional abilities from early childhood, but records suggest that the elderly man took particular interest in his illegitimate grandson's education. Antonio ensured Leonardo learned to read and write, though notably not in Latin, the language of scholars and clergy. This seemingly minor detail would later prove crucial, as Leonardo developed his thoughts in the vernacular Italian, making his ideas more accessible to craftsmen and artists rather than academic elites. The boy's left-handedness, considered a mark of the devil by many during the 15th century, further set him apart from his peers. Teachers attempted to force him to write with his right hand, but Leonardo stubbornly persisted with his left, eventually developing the famous mirror writing that would protect his ideas for centuries to come. This early act of defiance against authority would become a recurring theme throughout his life. By age 14, it became clear that traditional paths weren't suited for this extraordinary child. Ser Piero, recognizing his son's artistic talents, made a decision that would alter the course of history. He arranged for Leonardo to become an apprentice in Florence, in the workshop of Andrea del Verrocchio, one of the most prestigious artists of the era. This wasn't merely about learning a trade, it was about placing a young genius in an environment where his unconventional thinking could flourish. The journey from Vinci to Florence represented more than a change of location, it was a transformation from countryside observer to urban innovator. As Leonardo walked through the gates of Florence for the first time, he carried with him not just his few possessions, but a mind already questioning everything around him. The bustling city, with its towering cathedral dome engineered by Brunelleschi, and its streets filled with merchants, artists, and scholars, would provide the perfect laboratory for a mind that refused to accept limitations. Take a moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if you're genuinely enjoying what we're uncovering here. I'm curious about where you're watching from and what time it is in your part of the world. Drop your location and local time in the comments below. The illegitimate boy from Vinci was about to enter a world where art and science intersected, where innovation was currency, and where a mind like his could reshape humanity's understanding of what was possible. But first he would need to prove himself worthy of the secrets that awaited him in Verrocchio's workshop, secrets that master artisans guarded more carefully than gold. The workshop of Andrea del Verrocchio buzzed with activity from dawn until dusk, filled with the sounds of chisels striking marble, brushes sweeping across canvases, and apprentices grinding pigments in massive mortars. When 14-year-old Leonardo first stepped through its doors in 1466, he entered what was essentially the Google or Apple of Renaissance Florence, a place where the most advanced techniques in art, engineering, and natural philosophy converged under one roof. Verrocchio wasn't merely a painter. He was a complete Renaissance master who sculpted bronze, designed mechanical devices, studied anatomy, and created architectural marvels. His workshop functioned like a secret laboratory where the boundaries between art and science dissolved completely. The master had earned his reputation not just through beautiful works, but through innovations that other artists desperately sought to understand and replicate. Leonardo quickly discovered that apprenticeship here involved far more than mixing paints and cleaning brushes. Verrocchio insisted his students understand the mathematical principles behind perspective, the chemical properties of different pigments, and the anatomical structure beneath the skin they were painting. While other workshops taught students to copy established techniques, Verrocchio encouraged experimentation and questioning, approaches that perfectly matched Leonardo's insatiable curiosity. The young apprentice's exceptional abilities became apparent almost immediately. Within months, Leonardo was demonstrating a mastery of drawing that surpassed students who had trained for years. His observational skills, honed during his childhood wanderings around Vinci, allowed him to capture details that others missed entirely. When he sketched a hand, he didn't just render its surface appearance, he seemed to understand the muscles, tendons, and bones that created its movement and form. But it was Leonardo's approach to learning that truly set him apart from his fellow apprentices. While others focused on mastering established techniques, Leonardo constantly asked why and how. Why did certain pigments fade, while others remained vibrant? How did the eye perceive depth and distance? What mathematical relationships governed the proportions of the human body? These questions led him to conduct experiments that went far beyond traditional artistic training. Verrocchio recognized that he had encountered something unprecedented, a student whose mind operated on a completely different level. The master began sharing advanced techniques and theoretical knowledge, typically reserved for established artists. Leonardo learned about the camera obscura, studied geometric principles that governed architectural design, and gained access to anatomical texts that were forbidden to most people outside medical circles. Historians still debate whether Verrocchio deliberately concealed certain revolutionary techniques from his other students, while sharing them exclusively with Leonardo. Contemporary accounts suggest that the master developed special codes and symbols to record his most advanced methods, ensuring that valuable knowledge wouldn't fall into the hands of competitors or students who might leave to establish rival workshops. The relationship between master and exceptional apprentice grew increasingly complex as Leonardo's skills rapidly advanced. By 1470, just 4 years into his apprenticeship, Leonardo was contributing significant portions to major commissions. His involvement in Verrocchio's Baptism of Christ demonstrated abilities that some observers found unsettling. The angel painted by Leonardo possessed a lifelike quality that seemed to transcend mere technical skill. During these formative years, Leonardo absorbed not just artistic techniques, but also Verrocchio's approach to innovation and experimentation. The workshop became his university, teaching him that true mastery required understanding the fundamental principles underlying surface appearances. This philosophy would drive Leonardo to dissect corpses, design flying machines, and develop mirror writing, all logical extensions of the investigative mindset he developed under Verrocchio's guidance. The master also introduced Leonardo to Florence's intellectual community, including mathematicians, engineers, and natural philosophers, who gathered to discuss ideas that challenged traditional understanding. These connections exposed the young artist to cutting-edge thinking about optics, mechanics, and human anatomy, knowledge that would later inform his revolutionary contributions to multiple fields. As Leonardo's apprenticeship progressed, observers began to notice something unprecedented, a student whose abilities were beginning to surpass his master's. This development created both pride and unease within the workshop, as established hierarchies and traditional relationships faced disruption from a mind that refused to accept limitations. In the flickering candlelight of his private chambers, Leonardo da Vinci wrote in a way that would puzzle scholars for centuries to come. His pen moved from right to left across the page, creating text that appeared completely backwards to any casual observer. This wasn't a mere artistic quirk, or the result of his left-handedness. It was a deliberate encryption method that protected revolutionary ideas from prying eyes in an era when unconventional thinking could lead to accusations of heresy or worse. The mirror writing technique served multiple purposes beyond simple secrecy. In Renaissance Italy, the Catholic Church maintained strict control over intellectual discourse, and ideas that challenged established doctrine could result in imprisonment or death. Galileo's later persecution for supporting heliocentrism demonstrated the very real dangers faced by innovative thinkers. Leonardo's backward script created a barrier that discouraged casual reading while allowing him to record observations and theories that might otherwise have been deemed dangerous. But the mirror writing protected more than just controversial scientific ideas. Leonardo's notebooks contained detailed studies of human anatomy based on illegal dissections, military engineering concepts that could shift the balance of power between city-states, and artistic techniques that competing workshops would pay handsomely to obtain. By making his notes difficult to read, Leonardo ensured that his most valuable intellectual property remained secure. Modern analysis of Leonardo's handwriting reveals sophisticated variations in his mirror writing technique. For truly sensitive information, he employed additional layers of encryption, including coded symbols, abbreviated Latin phrases, and deliberately obscure references that would be meaningless to anyone lacking his specific knowledge. Some passages combine mirror writing with intentional misspellings and cryptic diagrams, creating puzzles that challenge researchers even today. The development of this writing system likely began during Leonardo's apprenticeship with Verrocchio, when he first encountered trade secrets that masters guarded jealously. Young apprentices who revealed workshop techniques to competitors faced severe consequences, including expulsion from their guilds and permanent exclusion from artistic communities. Leonardo's mirror writing evolved as a practical solution to this challenge, allowing him to record important information without risking exposure. Historians still debate whether Leonardo's mirror writing influenced his thought processes in fundamental ways. Writing backwards requires different mental pathways than conventional script, potentially encouraging the kind of reverse engineering thinking that characterized Leonardo's approach to problem solving. When he studied bird flight to design flying machines, or analyzed water flow to create hydraulic systems, he demonstrated the same backwards working methodology evident in his writing style. The technique also reflected Leonardo's broader philosophy about knowledge and secrecy. He believed that certain information was too powerful or dangerous to share freely, requiring careful consideration about who deserved access to revolutionary ideas. This attitude led him to deliberately destroy some inventions and hide others in coded notebooks, ensuring that his discoveries wouldn't fall into the wrong hands. Contemporary accounts describe visitors to Leonardo's workshop puzzling over notebooks filled with incomprehensible backwards text. Some observers suspected that the artist was practicing some form of magical incantation or communicating with supernatural forces. These misunderstandings actually enhanced Leonardo's reputation as a mysterious figure whose abilities transcended normal human limitations. The mirror writing also served practical purposes related to Leonardo's left-handedness. Writing from right to left prevented his hand from smudging fresh ink, a common problem for left-handed writers using the quill pens of his era. This practical consideration likely contributed to his initial adoption of the technique, which then evolved into a sophisticated encryption system. But perhaps most importantly, the mirror writing represented Leonardo's fundamental approach to learning and discovery. Just as he wrote backwards from conventional direction, he approached problems from unconventional angles, questioned established assumptions, and sought understanding through methods that others hadn't considered. The backward script became both symbol and manifestation of a mind that consistently chose difficult paths toward deeper truth rather than easy acceptance of surface appearances. The heavy wooden door creaked open in the dead of night as Leonardo slipped into the morgue beneath Santa Maria delle Grazie, carrying only a small oil lamp and his collection of carefully sharpened dissection tools. The year was 1489, and what the artist was about to undertake could have cost him his life, not from the dangers of disease or accident, but from the wrath of church authorities who considered the human body sacred and inviolable, even in death. The Catholic Church's prohibition against human dissection stemmed from deep theological beliefs about bodily resurrection and the sanctity of God's creation. While physicians were occasionally granted limited permission to examine corpses for specific medical purposes, artists were strictly forbidden from such activities. The Church taught that only God should know the intimate secrets of human anatomy, and unauthorized investigation of these mysteries constituted a form of blasphemy that could result in excommunication or worse. Yet Leonardo's artistic ambitions demanded understanding that went far beyond surface appearances. He had observed that paintings depicting human figures often looked wooden and lifeless, because artists didn't truly comprehend the structures they were attempting to render. How could one paint convincing muscle definition without understanding how muscles actually attached to bones? How could one capture the subtle play of light across skin without knowing the layers of tissue beneath? The corpses Leonardo examined came from various sources, each carrying its own risks and ethical complications. Some were executed criminals whose bodies the state released for educational purposes. Others were patients who had died in hospitals where Leonardo had cultivated relationships with sympathetic physicians. Occasionally, he worked with bodies of unknown individuals found in rivers or abandoned areas, investigations that brought him dangerously close to accusations of grave robbing. His dissection techniques evolved rapidly through trial and error, as no formal training existed for this forbidden practice. Leonardo developed specialized tools for separating muscle layers, exposing blood vessels, and examining organ structures. He learned to work quickly and efficiently, as decomposition made detailed study impossible after just a few days. Winter months provided the best opportunities, when cold temperatures slowed decay and allowed for more extensive examination. The knowledge Leonardo gained from these midnight sessions revolutionized his understanding of human anatomy far beyond what any contemporary artist possessed. He discovered that the heart had 4 chambers rather than the 2 described in ancient texts. He mapped the complete nervous system, traced blood vessel networks throughout the body, and identified muscle groups that classical anatomical drawings had missed entirely. His studies of the eye's structure led to insights about vision and optics that wouldn't be confirmed by science for centuries. But these investigations carried psychological as well as legal risks. Renaissance society viewed death and decay with superstitious dread, believing that prolonged contact with corpses could corrupt the soul or invite supernatural retribution. Leonardo's willingness to spend hours examining decomposing bodies marked him as someone whose pursuit of knowledge transcended normal human limitations, a reputation that enhanced his mystique while isolating him from conventional society. Historians still debate whether Leonardo's anatomical studies violated contemporary religious laws or operated within grey areas that provided legal protection. Some evidence suggests he received unofficial approval from certain church authorities, who recognized the value of his research for medical advancement. However, the secrecy surrounding his dissections indicates that he understood the controversial nature of his activities. The detailed anatomical drawings that resulted from these studies demonstrate unprecedented accuracy and artistic sophistication. Leonardo's sketches of human hearts, skeletal structures, and muscular systems surpassed anything produced by professional physicians of his era. He developed innovative techniques for illustrating three-dimensional structures on two-dimensional surfaces, creating an anatomical art that combined scientific precision with aesthetic beauty. These forbidden studies also influenced Leonardo's approach to portraiture and figure painting in ways that contemporaries found both fascinating and unsettling. His subjects possessed an uncanny lifelike quality that seemed to transcend mere technical skill, as if the artist possessed supernatural insight into the essence of human existence. High above the hills of Fiesole, Leonardo da Vinci stood at the edge of a makeshift platform, his latest flying contraption strapped to his back like mechanical wings of wood, canvas, and rope. The morning wind whipped through his hair as he calculated angles, weight distribution, and air currents with the intensity of a man whose obsession had nearly killed him multiple times already. This was 1496, and Leonardo's determination to unlock the secret of human flight had become a dangerous compulsion that pushed him to risk everything in pursuit of humanity's oldest dream. The fascination with flight had consumed Leonardo since his youth, when he spent countless hours observing birds near Vinci. But unlike casual observers, who simply marveled at the grace of soaring hawks or swooping swallows, Leonardo dissected the mechanics of flight with scientific precision. He studied wing angles during different flight phases, analyzed how birds adjusted their feathers to control direction and speed, and calculated the relationship between body weight and wing surface area needed to achieve lift. His first flying machine designs emerged from these observations, but they were based on a fundamental misunderstanding that nearly proved fatal. Leonardo initially believed that human flight required mimicking birds' exactly flapping wings, powered by arm and leg muscles. He constructed elaborate ornithopters with mechanical wings that the pilot would operate through complex pulley systems and pedals. The contraptions looked magnificent in his notebooks, but testing revealed a harsh reality: human muscles couldn't generate sufficient power for sustained flight. The first crash occurred during a secret test session near Santa Cecilia in 1503. Leonardo had convinced a brave assistant to pilot his latest design, a flying machine with wings spanning nearly 30 feet. The device managed to achieve brief liftoff before catastrophically losing stability and plummeting into a grove of olive trees. The pilot survived with multiple broken bones, but word of the accident reached Florence's gossip networks, generating rumors about Leonardo's dangerous experiments. Undeterred by this setback, Leonardo revised his approach, studying gliding birds like eagles and vultures that could soar for hours without flapping. He realized that successful flight might require working with air currents rather than fighting against them. This insight led to designs for fixed-wing gliders that represented a revolutionary departure from his earlier flapping wing concepts. The most dangerous experiment took place in 1505, when Leonardo decided to test a glider design himself rather than risk another assistant's life. Contemporary accounts describe him launching from a cliff near San Miniato, achieving several seconds of controlled flight before losing balance and crashing into a vineyard. The impact left him with injured ribs and a dislocated shoulder, but also provided crucial data about control surfaces and weight distribution that informed his subsequent designs. Historians still debate whether Leonardo achieved sustained human flight decades before the Wright brothers, as some fragmentary records suggest successful glider flights that lasted several minutes. However, the secretive nature of these experiments, combined with Leonardo's habit of destroying failed prototypes, makes verification impossible. What's certain is that his systematic approach to flight research established principles that wouldn't be rediscovered until the late 19th century. The flying machine obsession reflected Leonardo's broader philosophy about pushing beyond accepted limitations. While his contemporaries viewed human flight as impossible, a divine ability reserved for angels and mythological creatures, Leonardo saw it as an engineering challenge waiting for the right solution. This mindset drove him to conduct experiments that others considered foolhardy or blasphemous. His study of flight also yielded unexpected discoveries about air resistance, atmospheric pressure, and mechanical principles that improved his other inventions. The pulley systems developed for his ornithopters found applications in construction equipment. His understanding of air currents informed architectural designs for better ventilation. His analysis of wing structures influenced his painting techniques for depicting flowing fabric and hair, but the psychological cost of these experiments was significant. Leonardo's willingness to repeatedly risk death in pursuit of flight marked him as someone whose dedication to discovery transcended normal self-preservation instincts. Colleagues and patrons began viewing him as brilliantly unstable, a reputation that both attracted commissions and created suspicion about his judgment in other matters. In the shadowy confines of his workshop, Leonardo carefully positioned his model for what would become history's most enigmatic portrait. But the woman who sat before him was not the merchant's wife that popular legend would later claim. Francesco del Giocondo had never commissioned this painting, and his wife Lisa Gherardini had never posed in Leonardo's studio. The true identity of the Mona Lisa reveals a far more complex and controversial story that Renaissance society demanded remain hidden. The model who inspired the world's most famous smile was Gian Giacomo Caprotti, known as Salai, Leonardo's apprentice, companion, and quite possibly the great love of his life. This beautiful young man with feminine features had entered Leonardo's household in 1490 at age 10, initially as a student, but eventually becoming something far more significant. Contemporary documents describe Salai as a thief, a liar, obstinate, and a glutton. Yet Leonardo kept him close for nearly 3 decades, an attachment that puzzled everyone who knew them. The transformation of Salai's masculine features into the androgynous beauty of the Mona Lisa required all of Leonardo's artistic genius and understanding of human anatomy. Using techniques developed through his forbidden dissection studies, Leonardo softened angular jawlines, refined facial proportions, and created an idealized feminine version of his beloved companion. The famous enigmatic smile belonged to Salai, an expression Leonardo had observed countless times during their years together. This deception served multiple purposes beyond protecting Leonardo from accusations of sodomy, which carried the death penalty in Renaissance Italy. The painting allowed him to create a permanent monument to his deepest emotional attachment, while maintaining the pretense of conventional artistic commission. By disguising Salai as an unknown woman, Leonardo could display his masterpiece publicly without revealing its true subject or the intense personal feelings that inspired its creation. The technical innovations Leonardo developed specifically for this portrait demonstrate the painting's special significance in his artistic evolution. He pioneered sfumato techniques that created unprecedented subtlety in facial modeling, developed new pigment formulations that achieved extraordinary luminosity, and employed glazing methods that gave the skin an almost supernatural glow. These advances weren't merely artistic experiments, they were expressions of love rendered in oil and varnish. Historians still debate whether other figures in Leonardo's social circle recognized Salai's features in the Mona Lisa, but contemporary silence on the painting's subject suggests that those who understood kept the secret. Renaissance society operated according to complex codes about what could be openly acknowledged versus what must remain unspoken. Leonardo's reputation and social standing depended on maintaining certain appearances regardless of private realities. The painting's title, Mona Lisa, emerged decades after Leonardo's death, when the true circumstances of its creation had been forgotten or deliberately obscured. The name became attached to the portrait through a series of misunderstandings and false attributions that created the legend of Lisa Gherardini. This fabricated identity proved so compelling that it overshadowed any investigation into the painting's actual origins. Leonardo's decision to keep the Mona Lisa rather than delivering it to any patron further supports the theory of its deeply personal nature. Unlike his other commissioned works, this painting traveled with him throughout his later years, accompanying him to France, where it remained in his possession until death. Such attachment suggests emotional significance that transcended mere artistic achievement or commercial value. The androgynous quality that makes the Mona Lisa's gender subtly ambiguous reflects Leonardo's own complex understanding of beauty and attraction. His notebooks contain numerous studies of idealized faces that combine masculine and feminine characteristics, suggesting he was exploring concepts of beauty that transcended conventional gender categories. The Mona Lisa represents the culmination of these investigations. But perhaps most remarkably, the painting captures something genuine about human emotion and connection that resonates across centuries, despite its foundation in deception. The famous smile suggests secrets, knowledge, and intimate understanding, qualities that could only emerge from the deep familiarity between artist and beloved subject. In creating a fictional woman to disguise his male lover, Leonardo accidentally captured universal truths about love, desire, and the mysterious nature of human attraction. The letter arrived at Leonardo's workshop in the spring of 1502, bearing the seal of Cesare Borgia, one of Renaissance Italy's most feared and powerful military leaders. The Duke of Valentinois sought the services of the renowned artist, but not for paintings or sculptures. Borgia needed an engineer who could design weapons of unprecedented destruction, fortifications that could withstand any siege, and military innovations that would ensure his dominance over rival city-states. Leonardo accepted the commission, but what followed was a masterpiece of deliberate sabotage, disguised as engineering brilliance. The position of military engineer represented both opportunity and moral crisis for Leonardo. On one hand, it provided access to unlimited resources, prestigious patronage, and the chance to test engineering theories on a massive scale. Borgia's willingness to fund any project that promised military advantage meant Leonardo could finally build the mechanical devices that existed only as sketches in his notebooks. But accepting meant creating instruments of death and destruction that violated his deepest philosophical convictions. Leonardo's solution was as ingenious as it was dangerous. He would design revolutionary weapons and fortifications that appeared magnificent on paper and impressed observers during demonstrations, but contained subtle flaws that prevented their effective use in actual warfare. This deception required extraordinary technical skill. The defects had to be invisible to military engineers while ensuring catastrophic failure at crucial moments. His siege engine designs exemplified this approach. Leonardo created elaborate drawings for massive catapults, mobile towers, and battering rams that incorporated genuine innovations in mechanics and engineering. The prototypes he built functioned impressively during testing, launching projectiles with unprecedented accuracy and power. But Leonardo secretly weakened critical structural points, used materials he knew would fail under battlefield stress, and incorporated design elements that would cause malfunction when the machines were needed most. The most audacious example of Leonardo's sabotage involved his designs for naval warfare. Borgia's ambitions included coastal conquests that required superior maritime capabilities, so Leonardo developed plans for armored warships, underwater attack vessels, and harbor defense systems. His submarine designs represented genuine breakthrough thinking about underwater navigation and combat, but Leonardo deliberately omitted crucial details about ballast systems and air supply that would have made them functional. Historians still debate whether Borgia or his military advisors recognized the deliberate flaws in Leonardo's designs, but contemporary records suggest they attributed failures to the inherent challenges of implementing revolutionary technologies. Leonardo's reputation for brilliance actually protected him from suspicion. Observers assumed that temporary setbacks reflected the normal difficulties of pioneering work, rather than intentional sabotage. The psychological toll of this double life was significant. Leonardo maintained detailed notebooks documenting his weapons research, creating the impression of complete dedication to military innovation while secretly undermining every project. He developed close relationships with Borgia's engineers and commanders, knowing that his deceptions might ultimately contribute to their deaths in battle. This moral complexity haunted him throughout his tenure as military consultant. His fortress designs revealed the same pattern of apparent genius concealing deliberate weakness. Leonardo created revolutionary concepts for star-shaped fortifications, overlapping fields of fire, and integrated defense systems that influenced military architecture for centuries. But his actual construction recommendations included subtle vulnerabilities, weak points disguised as design features that enemy engineers could exploit if they possessed sufficient knowledge. The most dangerous aspect of Leonardo's deception involved his relationship with rival city-states. While officially serving Borgia, Leonardo secretly maintained communications with Florence, Venice, and other powers who faced Borgia's expansion. He provided intelligence about Borgia's military capabilities while ensuring that his own weapon designs wouldn't tip the balance decisively in any direction. Leonardo's weapons research also yielded genuine innovations that he carefully separated from his sabotaged military designs. His studies of ballistics, metallurgy, and mechanical engineering produced insights that informed his later civilian projects. The knowledge gained from designing instruments of war paradoxically contributed to his humanitarian inventions and artistic achievements. The moral justification for Leonardo's actions reflected his belief that certain knowledge was too dangerous to unleash without careful consideration of consequences. He saw himself as a guardian of revolutionary technology, willing to deceive patrons and risk personal safety to prevent weapons that could devastate entire populations. The flames crackled and roared as Leonardo fed another priceless manuscript into the fire, his weathered hands trembling slightly as he watched years of revolutionary work transform into ash and smoke. It was 1517, 2 years before his death, and the aging master was systematically destroying inventions and artistic techniques that he deemed too dangerous for the world to possess. What burned that night in his chambers at Clos-Lucé included designs for weapons that could level cities, artistic methods that could create perfect forgeries, and scientific discoveries that challenged the very foundations of Renaissance understanding. The decision to destroy his own legacy didn't emerge suddenly, but developed over decades as Leonardo witnessed how his innovations were inevitably corrupted by those who sought to exploit them for power or profit. His architectural improvements became tools for more effective sieges. His anatomical knowledge was twisted into methods for more efficient torture. His mechanical principles were adapted for instruments of oppression rather than human advancement. Among the lost masterpieces was a complete treatise on human flight that contained solutions to problems that wouldn't be solved again until the Wright brothers. Leonardo had spent 30 years refining his understanding of aerodynamics, developing wing designs based on mathematical principles rather than simple bird mimicry, and creating control systems that could have made sustained human flight possible. But he recognized that military applications would inevitably transform his flying machines into weapons of unprecedented destructive capability. The destroyed paintings included works that surpassed even the Mona Lisa in technical innovation and emotional depth. Contemporary accounts describe a self-portrait that captured not just Leonardo's physical appearance, but seemed to reveal the very essence of his character, his insatiable curiosity, his deep melancholy, and his burden of possessing knowledge that he couldn't safely share. The painting reportedly employed techniques that made the eyes appear to follow viewers with uncanny realism, but Leonardo burned it rather than risk having these methods discovered and exploited. His lost architectural designs included plans for entire cities based on mathematical principles that would have revolutionized urban planning. These weren't mere theoretical exercises but practical blueprints incorporating advanced water management, waste disposal, and transportation systems that wouldn't be reinvented until the modern era. Leonardo destroyed them after realizing that such knowledge in the wrong hands could create urban environments designed for surveillance and control rather than human flourishing. Historians still debate the extent of Leonardo's destruction, as inventory lists from his estate suggest that hundreds of notebooks and drawings disappeared between his final illness and the cataloguing of his possessions. Some scholars theorize that trusted associates helped Leonardo destroy sensitive materials, while others believe certain works were hidden rather than burned and remain undiscovered in secret locations. The most tragic loss involved Leonardo's mechanical automation designs, robots and artificial beings that demonstrated principles of mechanical intelligence centuries before such concepts were formally developed. These creations combined his understanding of anatomy, engineering, and artistic representation to produce figures that could move, gesture, and even produce sounds with startling realism. But Leonardo foresaw how such technologies could be used to deceive and manipulate, leading him to destroy both the devices and their operating principles. His advanced optics research suffered similar fate. Leonardo had developed techniques for creating images that appeared three-dimensional, lenses that could magnify objects to unprecedented degrees, and projection systems that could display moving pictures on surfaces. These innovations could have accelerated scientific discovery by centuries, but Leonardo understood their potential for creating convincing illusions and false evidence. The destruction extended to medical knowledge that could have prevented countless deaths from disease and injury. Leonardo's anatomical studies had revealed surgical techniques, understanding of circulation, and treatments for various conditions that far exceeded contemporary medical knowledge. But he witnessed how medical innovations were often restricted to wealthy elites while being denied to common people who needed them most. Perhaps most significantly, Leonardo destroyed his unified theory connecting art, science, and natural philosophy, a comprehensive framework that demonstrated the mathematical relationships underlying all natural phenomena. This work represented the culmination of his life's research, but he recognized that such knowledge could be used to manipulate natural forces in ways that might prove catastrophic. The irony of Leonardo's final years was that his greatest act of love for humanity involved denying them access to discoveries that could have transformed civilization. By destroying his most revolutionary work, he protected future generations from knowledge they weren't ready to handle responsibly. The grand hall of the Château du Clos-Lucé buzzed with tension as Leonardo da Vinci found himself caught between the competing demands of King Francis I of France and the shadowy representatives of Pope Leo X. It was 1516, and the aging master had become a prize in the complex political chess game that defined Renaissance Europe. Royal courts didn't simply patronize artists, they owned them, used them as diplomatic tools, and expected absolute loyalty in exchange for protection and resources. Leonardo's relationship with Francis I represented both sanctuary and imprisonment. The young French king had rescued him from the political turmoil of Italy, providing him with a generous pension, comfortable accommodations, and the freedom to pursue his research without immediate commercial pressures. But Francis's generosity came with expectations that went far beyond creating beautiful paintings or entertaining courtiers with mechanical marvels. The king wanted Leonardo's military engineering expertise to strengthen France's position against the Holy Roman Empire and various Italian city-states. Francis understood that technological superiority could determine the outcome of wars, and he saw Leonardo as a strategic asset whose knowledge could tip the balance of European power. Royal audiences often focused on weapons designs, fortification improvements, and engineering projects that would enhance French military capabilities. But simultaneously, Leonardo maintained secret correspondence with Vatican representatives who sought to prevent French access to certain innovations while ensuring that papal interests remained protected. Pope Leo X, himself a member of the powerful Medici family, understood the political implications of Leonardo's work and sought to influence his loyalties through a combination of spiritual authority and financial incentives. The complexity of these relationships was further complicated by Leonardo's ongoing connections to Italian city-states, where he had previously worked. Florence, Milan, and Venice all maintained networks of spies and informants who sought intelligence about French military preparations and technological developments. Leonardo found himself constantly navigating requests for information while trying to avoid accusations of treason or betrayal. Historians still debate whether Leonardo's loyalty ultimately belonged to any particular patron or whether he managed to maintain independence while appearing to serve multiple masters simultaneously. Contemporary diplomatic correspondence reveals suspicions about his true allegiances, with various courts questioning whether his cooperation was genuine or merely a facade concealing deeper commitments elsewhere. The most dangerous period occurred in 1517, when rumors circulated that Leonardo was sharing French military secrets with papal agents. Francis I ordered an investigation that could have resulted in charges of treason, a crime punishable by death, even for the most renowned artists. Leonardo's survival depended on his ability to demonstrate that his communications with other courts involved artistic and scientific matters rather than military intelligence. His strategy for managing these competing loyalties involved compartmentalizing different aspects of his knowledge and revealing only information that wouldn't significantly advantage any single patron over others. He shared architectural innovations with Francis while withholding engineering details that could be applied to military purposes. He discussed artistic techniques with papal representatives while concealing the scientific principles that made them possible. The psychological toll of constantly balancing these relationships contributed to Leonardo's increasing reclusiveness during his final years. Court life required him to present different personas to different audiences, appearing as a loyal French subject to Francis, a faithful Catholic to papal representatives, and a nostalgic Italian to various diplomatic visitors. This performance exhausted him physically and emotionally. Leonardo's notebooks from this period reveal increasing paranoia about surveillance and interception of his communications. He developed more sophisticated coding systems, employed multiple layers of encryption, and created false information designed to mislead anyone who might gain unauthorized access to his correspondence. His famous mirror writing became even more elaborate, incorporating symbols and abbreviations that only he could interpret. The patronage system that sustained Renaissance artists also created impossible ethical dilemmas for someone with Leonardo's capabilities and knowledge. His innovations could dramatically alter the balance of power between competing states, making him simultaneously valuable and dangerous to every patron who sought his services. Each royal court wanted exclusive access to his genius, while preventing rivals from benefiting from his discoveries. The final years of Leonardo's life were spent attempting to complete a comprehensive record of his discoveries, while ensuring that sensitive information wouldn't fall into the wrong hands after his death. The bells of Amboise Cathedral tolled solemnly on May 2nd, 1519, as Leonardo da Vinci drew his final breath in the arms of King Francis I, or so the official court historians recorded. But the circumstances surrounding the death of history's greatest genius were far more mysterious than royal propagandists would have the world believe. In the weeks following his passing, a systematic effort began to locate and secure Leonardo's missing notebooks, leading to discoveries that would haunt European courts for decades to come. Leonardo had spent his final months preparing for death, with the same methodical approach he applied to his scientific investigations. Knowing that his notebooks contained secrets that could destabilize governments and reshape the balance of power across Europe, he developed an elaborate plan to ensure that dangerous knowledge wouldn't fall into the wrong hands. Some materials were destroyed, others were hidden, and the most sensitive documents were entrusted to individuals whose identities remain unknown to this day. The immediate aftermath of Leonardo's death revealed the extent of his precautions. Francesco Melzi, his devoted pupil and heir, discovered that entire collections of notebooks had vanished from the master's chambers. Room by room searches uncovered hidden compartments containing coded messages, partial drawings, and cryptic references to locations where additional materials might be concealed. But the most crucial notebooks, those containing military innovations, advanced anatomical discoveries, and revolutionary engineering principles, had simply disappeared. King Francis I personally supervised efforts to locate the missing documents, understanding that they represented knowledge worth more than entire armies. French agents scoured the countryside around Amboise, following clues embedded in Leonardo's final writings and interrogating anyone who had access to his chambers during his illness. These investigations revealed that Leonardo had maintained secret relationships with individuals whose true identities and motivations remained murky even to royal intelligence networks. Historians still debate whether Leonardo's death occurred naturally or resulted from deliberate poisoning intended to prevent him from revealing certain secrets. Contemporary accounts describe symptoms that could indicate natural illness, but they also match patterns consistent with specific toxins known to Renaissance assassins. The timing of his death, occurring just days before a planned meeting with papal representatives, has fueled centuries of speculation about possible foul play. The most intriguing mystery involves Leonardo's final confession to Father Guillaume, the court chaplain who administered last rites. Church records indicate that this confession lasted several hours and left the priest visibly shaken, but the content was never recorded, and Father Guillaume himself died under suspicious circumstances less than a month later. Vatican archives contain hints that Leonardo revealed information about discoveries that challenged fundamental religious doctrines, but specific details remain classified to this day. In the months following Leonardo's death, a pattern of mysterious deaths occurred among individuals who had been associated with his final projects. 3 assistants died in separate accidents. A patron who had commissioned military designs was found dead in his library, and a merchant who had supplied Leonardo with rare materials disappeared entirely. These incidents might have been coincidental, but they suggest that someone was systematically eliminating people who possessed dangerous knowledge about Leonardo's work. The search for Leonardo's missing notebooks continued for years, with various European powers deploying considerable resources to locate materials that could provide military or political advantages. Some documents surfaced decades later in unexpected locations, hidden in monastery walls, buried beneath castle foundations, or concealed within the bindings of apparently unrelated books. But the most significant collections were never found, leading to speculation that they were successfully destroyed or remain hidden in locations known only to long-dead Confederates. Perhaps most remarkably, evidence suggests that Leonardo anticipated this posthumous hunt for his secrets and deliberately created false trails designed to confuse and misdirect searchers. Some of the notebooks that were eventually discovered contained sophisticated disinformation, plausible but incorrect technical drawings, coded messages that led nowhere, and references to non-existent hiding places. These deceptions demonstrated that Leonardo's final act of genius was protecting humanity from knowledge that could have proved catastrophic in the wrong hands. The ultimate fate of Leonardo's most dangerous secrets remains one of history's greatest unsolved mysteries, ensuring that his death became as enigmatic as his life had been extraordinary. If you enjoyed this exploration of Leonardo's hidden life, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. I'd love to know where you're watching from, and what time it is in your part of the world. Drop your location and local time in the comments below. We'll see you calmly in the next video, where we'll uncover more secrets that history tried to hide. Until then, sweet dreams.